Hello everyone. Before streaming, before algorithms dictated what we watch, there was a golden hour on Australian television when everything stopped for one show, Home and Away. The sunlit shores of Summer Bay weren't just scenery, they were a cultural phenomenon. It was a world where heartbreaks felt real, families felt familiar, and the women of the Bay became icons of an era. Their faces weren't just on TV, they lived in the hearts of millions. Among them was a young woman who embodied both innocence and intensity, Melissa George. When she appeared as Angel Parrish, the nation fell in love overnight. She was radiant, kind, and heartbreakingly human. Audiences saw her as the golden girl of Summer Bay, but behind that warmth was a woman who felt increasingly trapped by her own success. To millions, Angel Parrish was flawless. To Melissa, she was a mask she couldn't take off. As the years passed, the spotlight turned blinding. Every smile became a story, every public outing a headline. Melissa once confessed that fame felt like being locked inside someone else's dream. The very show that gave her everything also took away the one thing she craved most, anonymity. When she left Home and Away in 1996, it wasn't out of rebellion. It was an act of survival. She wanted to find herself again. Not Angel, not the sweetheart of Australia, but Melissa. Hollywood was no paradise either. The girl from Perth faced the same typecasting she'd tried to escape. Casting directors saw a soap star, not an actress. She went from living in a fantasy world on screen to fighting for real recognition off screen. But she didn't give up. Slowly, quietly, she rebuilt herself. From appearing in Alias and Mulholland Drive to earning award nominations for In Treatment. Each role was a rebellion, a message that she could transform without forgetting where she came from. Time has softened her presence, but sharpened her story. Today, Melissa George is more private, more selective, and more grounded. When fans rewatch her early scenes, the laughter, the tears, the sunlit romance, they're reminded of a simpler time, a time when television didn't just entertain, it felt like home. And yet behind that home was a girl who had to walk away to truly find peace, because in Summer Bay, every smile hides a storm, and Melissa's was the first one we ever noticed. Some people get to live their childhoods in private. Kate Ritchie didn't. She grew up under the nation's gaze. Her laughter, her tears, her awkward teenage years, all captured through the soft glow of a television screen. When she first appeared as Sally Fletcher in Home and Away in 1988, she was just 8 years old, clutching her lines and learning how to act. By the time she left, she wasn't just an actress, she was a memory, a living, breathing timeline of Australian television itself. There's something almost haunting about watching someone grow up on screen. We saw Sally go from a shy, freckled girl to a confident, compassionate woman, and in doing so, we unknowingly watched Kate grow too. She didn't just play a character, she became part of our families. For nearly 2 decades, her face marked every generation, the one constant as everything else in Summer Bay changed. But imagine being known for the same role for 20 years. Every job offer, every conversation, every red carpet moment began and ended with Sally Fletcher. When Kate finally decided to leave Home and Away in 2008, she admitted she didn't know who she was without it. It's the kind of identity crisis few can understand, when your entire self becomes a storyline that isn't yours anymore. Stepping into the real world after that was both freeing and terrifying. She tried new paths, radio, theater, children's books, and found success in each. Yet the public never truly let go. Every interview circled back to Home and Away. Every question a reminder that some characters are too loved to be left behind. Kate once said, "I grew up with Australia, and Australia grew up with me." It wasn't a complaint, it was an acceptance of the strange intimacy between a performer and the nation that raised her. Today, Kate Ritchie carries herself with quiet grace. She's a mother, a storyteller, and still a familiar voice in Australian media. But if you look closely, you can sense that bittersweet truth in her eyes, the kind that belongs only to those who have lived 2 lives, one real, one remembered. And yet, her story is far from tragic. It's proof that sometimes the most powerful transformation isn't reinvention, it's endurance. The ability to stay, to grow, and to still shine after the cameras stop rolling. Because while many stars of Summer Bay drifted away with the tide, Kate Ritchie never truly left. She is the tide, the rhythm that kept Home and Away alive long after its golden years faded into nostalgia. If Melissa George was the girl who ran from the Bay, Isla Fisher was the spark that exploded out of it. Before Hollywood red carpets, before she became one of comedy's most magnetic faces, Isla was just another young actress running across the sandy shores of Home and Away. She joined the cast as Shannon Reed in the early 90s, rebellious, radiant, and impossible to ignore. Even then, she carried something different, a mischief in her eyes, a kind of fearless energy that made her stand out in every frame. On screen, Shannon was bold, emotional, unpredictable, but behind the scenes, Isla was studying the mechanics of fame like a scientist. She watched how actors got boxed into their roles, how the industry quietly decided who could rise and who would remain the girl from that soap. And Isla made a promise to herself. She wouldn't stay in that box for long. After leaving Home and Away in 1997, she took one of the biggest gambles an actor could. She started over. No safety net, no big contracts, just a dream and a comedic instinct sharp enough to cut through Hollywood's noise. At first, it wasn't easy. Casting directors saw her resume and smirked, another Aussie soap star chasing a fantasy. But Isla kept showing up, with humor as her weapon. Her breakthrough came with Wedding Crashers in 2005. A chaotic, hilarious performance that made her unforgettable overnight. She went from that girl from Summer Bay to the woman who could steal entire scenes from seasoned Hollywood icons. Unlike most stars who distance themselves from their early work, Isla never denied where she came from. In interviews, she's spoken fondly about Home and Away, calling it her training ground, her crash course in endurance. But she also knew when to let go. If you stay too long, she once said, you start living someone else's story. That single line could define her entire career. Today, Isla Fisher stands as one of Hollywood's most respected comedic actresses, balancing wit with warmth, chaos with control. Married to Sacha Baron Cohen, she's built a life far removed from the golden beaches of Summer Bay. And yet, no matter how far she travels, her story carries that same Australian grit, the kind that turns small-town dreams into international legacies. Isla's transformation is more than just physical. It's symbolic. She didn't rebel against her past. She evolved beyond it. In a world where many fade into nostalgia, she built something new, something hers, and maybe that's what makes her story so powerful. She wasn't just from Home and Away. She was the one who proved you could leave it behind without ever losing yourself. Before social media turned every celebrity relationship into a battleground, there was a simpler time when romance between two famous faces could still feel like a fairy tale. And in the early 2000s, nobody embodied that dream quite like Beck Cartwright. Known to millions as Haley Smith on Home and Away, she was the kind of actress who didn't need to act much. Her warmth felt real, her smile effortless. She wasn't just beautiful, she was believable. Haley was the perfect storm of vulnerability and strength, a young woman finding her way through heartbreaks and chaos. But off-screen, Beck was quietly living her own coming-of-age story. From the moment she joined the cast in 1998, she stood out. There was a natural grace about her, a charisma that felt untouched by fame. She became one of the faces of Summer Bay, the poster girl of Australian television, the kind of actress whose name felt synonymous with the show itself. And then, just when her career was soaring, she did something that shocked everyone. She walked away. Not to chase Hollywood, not to reinvent herself, but to build a family. When she married tennis star Leighton Hewitt in 2005, the media frenzy was instant. The fairy tale wedding, the headlines, the glamour, it was everything the tabloids could dream of. But what followed was something rarer: silence. Beck disappeared from the chaos, choosing motherhood over the madness of showbiz. For years, people speculated she'd return, maybe for a movie, maybe for a comeback tour. But she never did. In a world addicted to reinvention, Beck did the opposite. She stayed content. She focused on raising her children, on living life away from flashbulbs and scripts. Occasionally, she'd appear in interviews or reality shows, her presence calm, almost untouched by time. The same innocence that once drew millions to Haley still lingered. Only now it belonged to someone who had found peace. Beck Hewitt's story is the quietest, yet maybe the most powerful of them all. She didn't chase global fame or transformation. She chose normalcy. She chose love. And in doing so, she became one of the rare stars who managed to leave the screen before it consumed her. Today, when fans rewatch those episodes from the late 90s, they often wonder what could have been, what roles she might have played, what career she might have built. But maybe that's the point. Beck's ending wasn't unfinished, it was intentional. Because sometimes the bravest thing a star can do is fade out while still shining. In the early 2000s, Home and Away had no shortage of beautiful faces, but few had the kind of spark Tammin Sursok brought to Summer Bay. As Danny Sutherland, she wasn't just another soap character, she was fire and softness in one. Her storylines were emotional, sometimes dark, always gripping. She tackled heartbreak, rebellion, and redemption, everything that made Home and Away more than a simple beach drama. And audiences loved her for it. Tammin's face became a constant on Australian television. Her performance is raw enough to make even the toughest viewer feel something real. But behind the scenes, she was restless. Fame in Australia had its limits, and Tammin knew it. After winning a Logie Award and earning the respect of her peers, she decided to take the biggest risk of her life. She packed her bags and left for Los Angeles. No guaranteed job, no safety net, just a belief that her talent could carry her across oceans. Hollywood, though, is not kind to dreamers. For every open door, there were 10 that slammed shut. Tammin has spoken openly about the years of rejection, the loneliness of being a foreigner in an industry obsessed with perfection. Casting directors saw her accent, her soap past, and labeled her too different. But where others broke, Tammin adapted. She reinvented her image, sharpened her craft, and slowly began finding her place again, first with small roles, then in The Young and the Restless, and later as Jenna Marshall in Pretty Little Liars, a role that reintroduced her to a new generation entirely. Tammin's Hollywood success didn't happen overnight. It was built from persistence, self-doubt, and 1,000 quiet nights wondering if she'd made the right choice. But that's exactly what makes her story powerful. She didn't rely on nostalgia or fame. She built everything again from scratch. She's since become a producer, a creator, and even an advocate for mental health, turning her hardships into inspiration. Today, Tammin Sursok is more than just a former Home and Away star. She's a survivor of the entertainment machine. Her social media presence feels genuine, her voice full of hard-earned wisdom. She talks about balancing motherhood with creativity, about the danger of chasing validation, about learning to be proud of the scars that come with ambition. In many ways, Tammin represents what happens when the spotlight fades but the passion remains. She didn't need to be the brightest star, she needed to be a lasting one, and she is. From the beaches of Summer Bay to the studios of Los Angeles, her story reminds us that reinvention isn't about running away from who you were, it's about growing into who you were meant to be. When people think of Home and Away, one name almost always surfaces: Ada Nicodemu. Unlike most who came and went, Ada stayed. She didn't just act on the show, she became part of its DNA. Joining as Leah Patterson in 2000, she quickly became the emotional anchor of Summer Bay, the one character who survived it all: heartbreak, loss, love, renewal. Her storylines mirrored life itself, and perhaps that's why audiences connected so deeply with her. Leah wasn't a fantasy, she was real. Ada's longevity is not an accident, it's endurance, discipline, and an understanding of what fame should mean. In an industry obsessed with youth and novelty, she did something radical. She grew older on screen, gracefully, without apology. Viewers watched her evolve from a young romantic to a grounded, resilient woman. She became a mirror for those who had also aged with the show, offering them something rare: familiarity. Behind the scenes, Ada was just as steady. While others chased bigger roles overseas, she stayed close to her roots, balancing television with family life and advocacy work. She used her platform not for attention, but for purpose, speaking about resilience, cultural pride, and the power of consistency in an industry built on instability. That quiet strength made her not just a character, but a symbol of continuity in a world that changes too fast. But longevity has its shadows too. Ada has spoken openly about the toll that constant visibility can take, the criticism, the expectation to stay perfect, the difficulty of separating self from screen. Yet, through it all, she never lost her sense of self. Her warmth off-screen mirrors the calm she portrays on it, proving that fame doesn't have to fracture you. It can, if you choose, refine you. Decades later, Ada Nicodemu remains one of the last true constants in Home and Away. She's seen co-stars come and go, storylines rise and fall, but her presence has been the thread that connects generations. Fans who started watching in their teens are now watching with their children, and Leah Ada is still there, smiling through the tides of time. There's something poetic about that, how one woman's persistence became the heart that kept Summer Bay alive. While others sought to escape or evolve beyond it, Ada chose to stay and elevate it. She didn't just survive Home and Away, she defined it. And maybe that's the haunting truth behind all these stories. Every actress who walked those beaches left a piece of herself behind. Some ran toward bigger worlds, others toward quieter lives. But the sea never forgets. It keeps their reflection shimmering in the waves, just like the memories of viewers who grew up watching them. Home and Away was never just a show about a town. It was a living time capsule of growing up, of breaking free, of staying true. And through women like Ada Nicodemu, its heart still beats, quietly, eternally, like the tide that never really goes away.